I'm Zara Reed, 32, a freelance journalist from Michigan. Our family's New Year's tradition at the lake house was my everything barbecues, fishing, laughter that made me feel joyful and happy. I poured my heart into every detail, thinking it held us together. But last November, my dad's voice cut through our planning call like a knife. Traditions are for parents. You can skip this year, he said. Calm and cold. Skip it. They were inviting neighbors and my brother's girlfriend instead, as if I didn't matter. My chest tightened, but I forced a nod and ended the call. That moment flipped a switch. I wasn't going to beg for a seat at their table. I made a choice that shocked them all. When they saw what I did next, their phones lit up with calls I didn't answer. And what happened after? It changed everything. Ever felt pushed out by family? Drop your story in the comments. Hit like and subscribe. You won't guess how this unfolds. Growing up in Michigan, our lake house was where I felt most connected. I'm Zara Reed, and those childhood summers in our family of 4, my parents, my older brother and me, felt like magic. Our lake house, tucked along a quiet shore, was our sanctuary. Every New Year's we'd gather for a tradition that defined us. The air buzzed with anticipation as we prepared for a weekend of barbecues, fishing trips, and stringing twinkling lights across the dock. It wasn't just a holiday. It was our glue. My mom, Barbara Reed, was the heart of the kitchen. She'd spend days planning the menu: grilled ribs, corn on the cob, her famous potato salad that neighbors raved about. She'd hum old Motown tunes, her hands deftly chopping vegetables while I watched in awe. Dad John Reed took charge of the lake, a gruff engineer with a soft spot for fishing. He'd lead us out on the boat, teaching us how to cast lines and spot the best spots for bass. His laughter echoed when we'd reel in a big one, and he'd slap my brother's back, proud of his knack for it. My role was different. I was the spark, the one who made the lake house glow. At 10, I started stringing lights along the dock, weaving them through railings until the whole place shimmered under the stars. By 16, I was leading games, charade scavenger hunts, keeping everyone laughing late into the night. I'd plan every detail from the playlist to the table settings, wanting it to be perfect. My brother, Mark Reed, was 3 years older, always the cool one. He'd help Dad with the boat or charm the neighbors with his easy grin, but he never cared as much as I did. When he moved to Chicago for a banking job at 25, things shifted. He'd show up less, call less, his life now, tied to the city and his girlfriend. I'd text him asking if he'd come, but his replies were short-distant. Busy, he'd say, or maybe next year. Those years apart stung, but I told myself it was just him growing up. I clung to the lake house, to the tradition that felt like home. Mom would still send me recipes to approve, and Dad would ask which bait I'd pick for fishing. I thought we were still us. But as I got older, I noticed cracks. Mom and Dad would talk about Mark's job, his apartment, his life in Chicago, their voices bright with pride, my freelance writing. They'd nod, but their eyes didn't light up the same way. It's not steady. Mom once said, her tone, gentle, but sharp. I brushed it off, pouring more of myself into the tradition to prove I belong. By my late 20s, I was the one keeping the flame alive. I'd drive up early, hauling boxes of lights, planning menus with Mom, checking the boat with Dad. The neighbors' families we'd known forever started joining us, their kids running wild with ours. I loved the chaos, the way it felt like we were all one big family. But Mark's absence grew heavier. He'd breeze in for a day, maybe then leave early claiming work. His girlfriend started coming instead, fitting into his spot like she'd always been there. I didn't mind at first. She was nice. Laughed at my jokes, but it felt like Mark was slipping away. And Mom and Dad didn't seem to care. I never missed a single New Year's at the lake house. For years, I dropped everything to be there, even when it cost me. New Year, 2 years ago, I got a call from a big New York magazine. They wanted me to fly out for an interview, a staff writer position, the kind of job that could have changed my career. I was 29, scraping by as a freelance journalist, pitching stories late into the night. The offer was a dream. But it fell on the same weekend as our family tradition. I didn't hesitate. I turned it down, telling myself the lake house was worth it. Mom needed me for the menu, Dad for the fishing plans. I couldn't let them down. Looking back, I wonder why I thought they'd notice. My work wasn't just a hobby, though. A few months ago, I landed a feature in a national magazine, a deep dive into Michigan's small-town music scene. It took weeks of interviews, late-night edits, and countless rejections to get there. When the editor emailed me saying it was one of their best pieces that year, I felt like I'd finally made it. I printed the article, framed it, and kept it on my desk, imagining the moment I'd show Mom and Dad. I pictured Dad's rare smile, Mom's hug, maybe even a toast at the lake house. But when I mentioned it over dinner last spring, Mom just nodded. "That's nice, Zara," she said, her eyes drifting to her phone. Dad grunted. "Freelancing's unsteady. Mark's bank job now, that's solid." My stomach twisted, but I swallowed the hurt and changed the subject. Mark was always the golden child. At 33, he had a corner office in Chicago, a fancy apartment, a girlfriend who fit right into his world. Mom would go on about his promotions, how he was set for life. Dad would brag about Mark's car, his bonuses, as if my bylines didn't matter. I'd listen, forcing a smile, hoping one day they'd see me the same way. I wasn't jealous Mark worked hard, but the comparison stung. I'd spent years building a career I loved, taking risks they couldn't understand. Freelancing wasn't easy. Every story was a fight, every paycheck uncertain. But I was good at it, and I wanted them to care. I threw myself into the lake house to make up for it. Every New Year's I'd show up with new ideas. Better lights, a playlist to keep the kids dancing, games that made everyone laugh. I thought if I made the tradition perfect, they'd see how much I gave. Last winter, I spent hours researching eco-friendly lanterns, thinking Dad would appreciate the effort. He didn't. "They're fine," he said, barely looking up. Mom was too busy texting Mark to notice. I kept going though, telling myself it was for the family, for us. I'd text Mark asking if he'd bring anything special this year, but he'd reply with one-word answers: work. I didn't push. I figured the planning call would bring us together like always. This time, I was ready to shine. My article had just gone live, and the feedback was pouring in. Readers, emailing, colleagues, sharing it online. I spent days preparing what I'd say, practicing how I tell Mom and Dad about the magazine feature. I even wrote notes, wanting to get the words right. I imagined them listening. Really listening, maybe asking to read the piece. I saw myself at the lake house holding court by the fire, everyone raising a glass to my success. It wasn't about bragging. I just wanted them to be proud to see me as more than the kid who strung lights. I didn't know the call would be different. I didn't know it would break something inside me. By late November, I was sitting at my laptop, ready for our New Year's planning call. My notes were open, my article's success buzzing in my head. I'd practiced how I'd share it, imagining Mom's smile, Dad's nod, maybe even Mark chiming in with a rare "nice job." The Zoom window popped up, their faces flickering on screen, Mom sipping tea, Dad leaning back, Mark distracted, his girlfriend beside him. I took a breath, ready to shine. "Hey everyone," I started, my voice bright. "I've got big news. My article made it into a national magazine. It's getting tons of feedback." I waited, expecting a reaction. Mom glanced up, said, "Oh, that's great, honey." Then went back to her phone. Dad just nodded, his eyes on some papers. Mark muttered, "Cool," barely looking up. My heart sank. But I pushed on, talking about the lake house. "So, for this year's menu, I was thinking we could try some new dishes, maybe smoked brisket, and I found these solar lights for the dock." Dad cut me off. "Actually, Zara," he said, his tone flat, "we're changing things up this year. We're inviting the Wilsons and the Carters and Angela Lane, Mark's girlfriend. You can skip this year." The words hit like a punch. "Skip it?" I blinked, my screen frozen on his face. "Wait, what?" I managed my voice tight. "You mean I'm not coming? It's not a big deal," Dad said, shrugging. "Traditions are for us parents. You're young. You've got your own life." Mom nodded, adding, "We just thought it'd be nice to have the neighbors this time. Angela's excited to join." Angela smiled, oblivious, while Mark shifted uncomfortably. I stared at them, my chest tightening. "So, Mark's coming, right?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Dad didn't hesitate. "Of course. He's family." The room spun. Mark was family, but I wasn't. I'd spent years planning, decorating, making the lake house ours, and now I was expendable. I wanted to scream, to ask why they valued his presence over mine. Instead, I clenched my jaw, forcing a smile. Okay, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. I get it. I'll sit this one out. Mom looked relieved, saying, "It's just 1 year, Zara. Don't overthink it." Mark glanced at me, his eyes flickering with something, guilt maybe. But he stayed silent. I clicked out of the call, my screen going dark. Alone in my apartment, I sat there replaying Dad's words. Traditions are for us parents, Mark's family. Each one cut deeper, slicing through years of effort. I thought of every New Year's I'd poured my heart into, every time I'd chosen them over my own dreams. And for what? To be replaced by neighbors and someone I barely knew. Angela wasn't even family, but she got an invite over me. Mark, who barely showed up, was still their priority. I wasn't angry at him or even her. It was them, Mom and Dad, for making me feel like I didn't belong. I opened my laptop again, staring at the article I'd been so proud of. The words blurred as my mind raced. What was I to them? The kid who strung lights, who planned games, who kept their tradition alive, or just someone they could push aside when it suited them? I closed the laptop, my hands shaking. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to cry, but I knew one thing. I wasn't the same Zara who'd logged into that call. Something had shifted and there was no going back. After the call, I sat stunned in my tiny apartment. The silence was heavy, Dad's words echoing in my head. I wasn't going to cry, but I needed someone to make sense of it. I called Kristen Moore, my best friend since college, who always knew how to cut through my chaos. They told me to skip New Year's. I said, my voice low. They invited Mark, Angela, even the neighbors, but not me. Kristen didn't hesitate. Zara, you've given them everything. When was the last time you did something for you? Her words hit hard. She was right. I'd spent years putting their traditions first, always hoping for a nod of approval that never came. Forget the lake house, she said. Go somewhere that makes you feel alive. That night, I couldn't sleep. Kristen's advice kept looping in my mind. I opened my laptop, scrolling through travel sites, my heart racing. Paris. I'd always dreamed of it. The art, the food, the freedom. But it wasn't practical. My savings, $15,000 scraped together from freelance gigs, was meant for emergencies, not whims. Still, the thought of staying in Michigan, pretending everything was fine, made my skin crawl. I needed to do this. I needed to choose myself. The next morning, I called Susan Carter, a travel agent I'd met through a story I wrote last year. I want to go to Paris, I told her, my voice firm, despite the nerves. For New Year's, can you make it happen? Susan didn't miss a beat. Give me a day, she said, her excitement contagious. By evening, she emailed me an itinerary, a week in Paris, a boutique hotel near the Seine flights, and a cooking class. The total just over 15,000. I stared at the number, my savings flashing before my eyes. It was reckless, but it felt right. I wired the payment, my hands shaking as I hit send. This wasn't just a trip, it was a statement. Packing was a blur. I pulled out my warmest clothes. Wool sweaters, a heavy coat, scarves for the Parisian winter. I tucked in a few books, novels I'd been meaning to read but never had time for. My camera, a gift from Kristen years ago, went in too. I wanted to capture every moment. As I zipped up my suitcase, a strange mix of freedom and fear washed over me. I was breaking away, doing something for myself. But what if I was making a mistake? What if I came back to the same empty feeling? I pushed the doubts aside. This was my chance to rewrite the story. I still had to clear it with work. I emailed William Hayes, my editor, at the local paper, requesting a week off. I braced for pushback. Freelancers don't get vacations easily, but William replied within hours. Zara, your article's still getting buzz. He wrote, you've earned this. Go enjoy Paris. His words, so simple, felt like the validation I'd craved from my family. Someone saw my work, saw me. It was enough to quiet the last of my hesitations. By early December, everything was set. My flight was booked for the week before Christmas. My hotel confirmed my itinerary, packed with plans. A museum tour, a walk along the Shell, a cafe crawl. I didn't tell Mom or Dad. Mark texted once asking if I was okay, but I left it on red. I wasn't ready to explain, not to him, not to anyone. For the first time, I wasn't planning for them. I was planning for me. As I folded my last sweater, I felt a spark I hadn't felt in years. Paris wasn't just a destination. It was a new beginning. The plane touched down in Paris on a chilly morning. I stepped into the city, my breath catching at the sight of cobblestone streets and golden lights. My hotel, a boutique gem near the Seine, welcomed me with a cozy room and a view of twinkling bridges. I dropped my bags, feeling a rush of possibility. For the first time in years, I wasn't planning someone else's holiday. This was mine. My first day, I joined a French cooking class in a quaint studio. The chef, a wary Parisian, taught us to make coq au vin, his hands flying as he explained wine reductions. I laughed with strangers. My apron dusted with flour, savoring the joy of learning something new. Later, I wandered into the Louvre, standing in awe before the Mona Lisa, its quiet smile pulling me into a world beyond my own. Paris was alive, and I was part of it. At the cooking class, I met Carol Larson, a freelance writer in her 40s with sharp eyes and a warm laugh. Over coffee, we swapped stories. "I left my family behind," she said, stirring her espresso. "They wanted me to stay in Ohio, take a safe job. I chose writing, moved to New York, and never looked back." Her words struck a chord. I told her about the lake house, the traditions I'd clung to, the call that broke me. "You're here now," Carol said. "That's what matters. You're choosing you." I nodded her story, settling into me like a map for my own path. I started exploring more, my camera in hand. I snapped photos in MMA, where artists sketched under lamplights, and along the Seine where couples strolled hand in hand. I posted a few shots online, a cafe glowing at dusk, a street performer strumming a guitar. I didn't expect much, just a way to capture the moment. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Mom. "Where are you?" Another from Mark Paris. "Seriously." Even Dad sent a curt, "You okay?" I stared at the screen, their words pulling at old wounds. They'd noticed me now, but only because I'd left. I didn't reply. Instead, I posted another photo. This one of me smiling outside, a patisserie croissant in hand. Each day in Paris chipped away at the weight I'd carried. I walked through markets tasting cheeses and fresh bread, letting myself linger without a schedule. I sat in cafes, scribbling in my notebook ideas for stories flowing freely. One afternoon while sketching by the Seine, wasn't just the girl who strung lights or planned games. I was Zara, a writer. Someone who could boo life on her own terms. Sliding the will on her own terms. The need for Mom's hugs or Dad's approval. The sting of Mark's distance, it was still there. But it didn't define me anymore. The next night, Carol invited me to a writer's meetup. We sat in a crowded bistro, swapping pitches and laughing over wine. "You've got a spark," she told me, clinking her glass against mine. "Don't let anyone dim it." Her words stayed with me as I walked back to my hotel. The city glowing around me. Paris had given me more than a trip. It had shown me my own strength. I wasn't running from my family. I was stepping into myself. On New Year's Eve, I got a video call from Dad. I was in my Paris hotel sipping wine. The city's fireworks faintly audible outside. His face appeared on my laptop. Mom beside him, Mark and Angela in the background. "Zara," Dad started, his voice gruff. "We saw your photos. Why didn't you tell us?" I set my glass down, my pulse quickening. I'd been waiting for this moment, not to explain, but to finally speak my truth. "I didn't think you'd care," I said, my tone steady. "You made it clear I wasn't needed this year. You chose Mark, Angela, the neighbors, over me." Mom's eyes widened, but I kept going. "I've spent years keeping our traditions alive, but you've always favored Mark, his job, his life. It's all you talk about. When have you ever noticed mine?" Dad shifted his jaw tight. "We didn't mean it like that," he said. "We just thought you'd be fine on your own. You're always so independent." His words felt like a dodge, not an apology. Mom jumped in, her voice sharp. "Zara, you're being too sensitive. It's 1 year. We didn't kick you out." I laughed, a bitter edge creeping in. "You told me to skip it. You invited Angela, who's not even family, and kept Mark's spot. How is that not kicking me out?" Angela looked away, uncomfortable. Mark cleared his throat, surprising me. "She's right," he said, his voice low. "I felt it too. You put me on a pedestal, but it's suffocating. I didn't ask for that." Dad's face hardened, but Mom's eyes darted between us, unsettled. I took a breath, the weight of years pouring out. "I gave up so much for you," I said. "Jobs, opportunities, my own dreams, just to keep our family together. And you dismissed it all. I'm done." Dad tried to interrupt, but I cut him off. "I'm not coming back to the lake house. Not this year. Not ever." Mom gasped. "Zara, you don't mean that," but I did. I clicked off the call. The screen going black. My hands shook, but I felt lighter, like I'd finally shed a burden I'd carried too long. Back in Michigan, I settled into my apartment, the Paris trip still alive in my mind. My phone buzzed with messages, Mom's apologies, Dad's gruff texts, even Mark asking to talk. I ignored them. I wasn't angry anymore. I just didn't need their validation. I threw myself into work pitching new stories, meeting deadlines. William, my editor, gave me a bigger feature, praising my drive. Kristen and I met for coffee, laughing about old times, planning new adventures. My life felt full, not because of them, but because of me. Later I heard from a neighbor that the lake house gathering fell apart. Dad and Mom tried to keep it going, but without me, it wasn't the same. Mark didn't show up the next year, telling them he needed space, too. Mom called him selfish. Dad stopped talking about traditions altogether. Their regret was clear, but it was too late. They'd built a family on uneven ground, and it crumbled when we stopped holding it up. I didn't gloat. It just proved I'd made the right choice. Looking back, I learned something vital. My worth isn't tied to a family that doesn't see me. I spent years chasing their approval, thinking it would make me whole. But Paris showed me I could define my own value through my work, my choices, my life. I'm not saying family doesn't matter, but when their love comes with conditions, it's not love, it's obligation. I chose myself, and I'd do it again. To everyone who's followed this story, thank you for sticking with me. Your time means the world. Have you ever had to walk away to find yourself? Share your thoughts below. Hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that hit close to home.